One of the 10 dinners on this list never actually happened. And by the end of this video, that's the one you'll remember most clearly of all. Picture 10 Bible dinner tables. Some peaceful, some tense enough to nearly end in violence. One built entirely on a lie that reshaped 2 nations. One that never happened at all, outside of a story meant to make a point. Almost none get remembered for the meal itself. Yet together they map out something modern science is still trying to prove. That who sits across from you at dinner may matter more for your digestion than anything actually on the plate. Let's count down 10 forgotten Bible dinners, quietly hiding some real, useful science in plain sight the entire time. Stay with me for number 9. A meal one exhausted man was too depleted to even ask for. And number 1, the dinner that never happened at all. Let's start right now at number 10. Number 10. The EMMAUS dinner. Have you ever had a meal so simple it should have been forgettable, and yet it's the one you remember years later, long after fancier dinners have blurred together? 2 grieving disciples had exactly that experience, walking home from Jerusalem after the crucifixion, still trying to make sense of everything that had just happened. In Luke chapter 24, 2 followers of Jesus are walking to a village called Emmaus, deep in grief and confusion, when a stranger joins them on the road and begins explaining scripture to them without either recognizing who he actually is, walking alongside them for miles, without either man suspecting who he truly was. They invite him in for the evening, and it's only when he breaks the bread that they suddenly recognize him as the risen Jesus, at which point he vanishes from their sight entirely, leaving them to piece together what had just happened over that same table, staring at each other in stunned silence. What's easy to miss is how little food is actually described. Just bread, nothing elaborate, nothing that would have taken hours to prepare or required any special ingredients most households wouldn't have already had on hand. Research on commensality, the study of eating together, consistently finds that the quality of attention and presence at a table matters more for the psychological benefit of a meal than the complexity or quantity of food served. A finding this brief, bread-only dinner illustrates almost perfectly, centuries before anyone thought to study it formally with control groups and survey instruments. This is one of the simplest entries on this entire list to actually use as a model going forward. A full, undistracted presence at a simple meal appears to matter more, psychologically, than an elaborate spread eaten while distracted, rushed, or only half paying attention to the person across from you, phone within reach and mind somewhere else entirely. From a meal too simple to plan, let's move to 1. A man was too exhausted to even ask for. Number 9. Elijah's angel meal. Here's the meal we promised you. Have you ever been so exhausted, so completely depleted, that even eating felt like too much effort, like just lifting the food to your mouth was one task too many? Elijah reaches exactly that point after one of the most dramatic victories of his entire life, immediately followed by a death threat that seems to break something in him. In 1 Kings chapter 19, immediately after defeating the prophets of Baal in a very public, exhausting confrontation on Mount Carmel, a spiritual and physical high unlike almost anything else in his career, Elijah flees into the wilderness after Queen Jezebel threatens his life in a direct personal message meant to terrify him, sits under a tree, and asks God to let him die, completely spent physically and emotionally after the adrenaline of the previous day has fully worn off and left nothing behind but exhaustion. He falls asleep, and an angel wakes him, not with a lecture or encouragement, but with bread and water. He eats, goes back to sleep, and the angel wakes him a second time, telling him directly that the journey ahead is too much for him without eating again first, insisting rather than simply offering. Modern research on burnout and chronic stress consistently shows that sleep and nutrition are among the first systems to break down under sustained pressure, and that recovery genuinely requires both together, not one substituted for the other or treated as optional once the crisis has technically passed and the adrenaline has worn off. Someone running on stress hormones alone can often push through short-term, adrenaline-masking exhaustion for a while, but the body eventually demands the exact two things this angel provides, in the exact order the text describes. Rest first, then food, then rest again. A sequence that happens to line up closely with what recovery specialists still recommend today for anyone dealing with genuine burnout. If you've ever pushed through exhaustion, assuming willpower alone would carry you, this story offers a strikingly literal, physiological correction. Sometimes the actual solution is genuinely this basic, and no amount of determination substitutes for it or speeds up what the body actually needs. It's also worth noticing what the angel doesn't do here. No question about what went wrong on Mount Carmel, no request for an explanation, no immediate pep talk about getting back out there and pushing through. Just food, then sleep, then more food, then sleep again, before any conversation about what comes next is even attempted. From a meal that came before anything else could happen, let's move to one specifically designed to stop a massacre. Number 8. Abigail's Reconciliation Feast. Have you ever noticed how much harder it is to stay angry at someone once you're actually sitting down, eating with them, the tension somehow softening the moment food is actually in front of you both? Abigail seems to have understood this instinctively, thousands of years before anyone studied it formally in a lab. In 1 Samuel chapter 25, David, furious after Nabal's insult, refusing to provide food for men who had protected his shepherds and flocks for months without asking anything in return, despite David's men treating those shepherds with genuine respect the entire time, sets out with armed men to kill every male in Nabal's household. Abigail, hearing what's happened from a terrified servant who knew exactly how much danger the household was now in, quickly assembles an enormous meal: bread, wine, dressed sheep, roasted grain, raisins, and fig cakes, loading it onto donkeys and riding out to intercept David before he arrives, offering the food as an immediate act of peace rather than waiting to explain herself first or send a message ahead. Anthropologists studying commensality across cultures have documented this exact pattern repeatedly. Shared food has functioned as a de-escalation tool in human conflict for about as long as record-keeping exists, from ancient treaty meals to modern diplomatic dinners, still held today before difficult negotiations even formally begin. There's a real physiological piece behind it too. Offering and sharing food activates trust-related social responses that are difficult to maintain hostility alongside, part of why so many peace negotiations throughout history have happened over a meal rather than across an empty table, with nothing but tense words between two angry parties who otherwise have no reason to lower their guard. Abigail's strategy works. David calls off the attack before a single person is harmed, crediting her directly and immediately for stopping him from a decision. He later admits he would have deeply regretted for the rest of his life. A moment of clarity, he seems genuinely grateful. She forced on him before it was too late to undo. It's worth noting too that she doesn't wait for David to calm down on his own or hope the situation resolves itself. She actively intervenes with food as the very first move, before a single word of explanation or apology, trusting the meal itself to open the door that words alone might not have managed in time. From a meal that stopped a massacre before it could happen, let's move to one behind a story. Most people only remember for what happened afterward. Number 7. Gideon's meal for the angel. Most people remember this next story for the fire that suddenly consumes a meal in front of a terrified man. Almost nobody remembers what the meal actually was, or how carefully it was prepared before that fire ever entered the picture at all. In Judges chapter 6, Gideon prepares food for a visitor he doesn't yet realize is an angel, a young goat and unleavened bread, along with broth kept separately in a pot, an entire meal, built specifically for hospitality rather than anything he was planning to eat himself that evening. While threshing wheat in secret inside a winepress to hide it from the Midianite raiders terrorizing the countryside. Only after the food is presented does the angel touch it with his staff, and it's consumed instantly in fire, finally convincing Gideon of exactly who he's been speaking with the entire time. After doubting and questioning throughout their conversation up to that point, the meal itself, before the miracle interrupts it, reflects an ancient Near Eastern hospitality code taken extremely seriously, offering a stranger your very best food, prepared specifically for them, rather than simply sharing leftovers or whatever happened to already be sitting around the house. Modern hospitality and social psychology research still finds that the effort visibly put into preparing food for someone communicates value and welcome more effectively than the food's actual nutritional content or how expensive the ingredients happen to be. A principle Gideon seems to have understood instinctively, even before he knew who he was, actually feeding that evening, treating an unknown traveler the same way he would have treated visiting royalty. From a meal prepared with real care for a stranger who turned out to be far more than he appeared, let's go all the way back to the very first recorded meal in the entire Bible. Number 6. Melchizedek's bread and wine. Here's a meal shorter than a modern grocery list, and it happens to be the oldest one recorded anywhere in the entire Bible, older than almost every other story covered anywhere in this series so far. In Genesis chapter 14, after Abram returns victorious from rescuing his nephew Lot from a coalition of invading kings, a battle he'd won despite being significantly outnumbered and fighting far from home, a mysterious figure named Melchizedek, described as both king of Salem and priest of God Most High, brings out bread and wine to meet him, blessing him before anything else happens between them or any negotiation over the spoils of battle even begins. The entire meal is described in a single verse. No elaborate preparation mentioned, no lengthy guest list, no description of the setting beyond the fact that it happened at all. This brief entry is worth including specifically because it pushes back against a modern assumption that a meaningful shared meal requires real effort or complexity to matter, an assumption that shows up constantly in how elaborately people feel they need to entertain before inviting anyone over at all, sometimes putting off gathering with friends for months simply because the house or the menu doesn't feel impressive enough yet. Commensality research doesn't actually support that assumption. What seems to matter most is the intention and attention behind the meal, not its scale. A 2-ingredient meal in Genesis carrying just as much recorded significance as far more elaborate feasts described elsewhere in Scripture, and referenced repeatedly by later biblical writers. If your own version of connecting over food has started to feel like it needs to be elaborate to count, expensive ingredients, and hours of preparation before anyone's allowed at your table, this is a useful, very old counterexample worth remembering. The next time you're tempted to cancel plans simply because you don't have time to cook something impressive. From the shortest meal on this list, let's move to one stolen mid-preparation, changing the entire course of 2 nations. Number 5. Isaac's stew. Have you ever eaten a meal while something was happening around you that you had no idea about, only to find out afterward how much it actually mattered, how differently everything might have gone if you'd known? Isaac has exactly that experience in one of the most consequential meals in the entire Bible. In Genesis chapter 27, Isaac, old and nearly blind, asks his elder son, Esau, to hunt wild game and prepare a meal so he can give him his final, formal blessing before he dies. A blessing that carried enormous legal and spiritual weight in that culture. While Esau is out hunting, Rebekah quickly prepares a similar dish from the family flock and dresses Jacob in his brother's clothing, even covering his arms with goatskin to mimic Esau's hairier build, successfully deceiving Isaac into blessing the wrong son entirely. The blessing, once given, can't be taken back or reassigned, even once the deception is discovered moments later, reshaping the future of two entire nations descended from these brothers for generations to come. Unlike most of the meals on this list, this one is a useful contrast case. Food shared under deception, however calm the table itself might have looked from the outside, didn't actually produce the trust or connection. Real commensality research associates with shared meals, since the entire interaction was built on a lie one party didn't know about until it was already too late to matter or reverse. It's a reminder that the ritual of eating together doesn't automatically create genuine connection if honesty isn't actually present at the table alongside the food itself, no matter how convincing the performance around it happens to be to everyone involved at the time. From a meal built on deception that couldn't be undone once discovered, let's move to one built specifically to repair 20 years of it instead. Number 4. Jacob and Laban's covenant meal. Two men who'd spent 20 years cheating and distrusting each other, sitting down to share a meal like none of it had happened, the resentment set aside long enough to actually eat together in something resembling peace. That's essentially what closes out one of the longest-running family conflicts in the entire book of Genesis. In Genesis chapter 31, after years of tension, manipulation, and mutual suspicion between Jacob and his father-in-law Laban, tension that included wage disputes, secretly fleeing in the night with his entire household, and a tense pursuit across the countryside that nearly turned violent, the two finally reach a formal agreement to leave each other in peace and go their separate ways. Jacob offers a sacrifice on the mountain where they'd finally caught up to each other, and then, specifically, invites Laban and his relatives to eat a meal together right there, sealing the resolution with food rather than simply parting ways the moment the terms were spoken and agreed upon. This pattern, closing a formal reconciliation specifically with a shared meal rather than ending the interaction the moment terms are agreed, shows up so often across ancient Near Eastern treaties that historians consider it a standard, expected part of covenant making in that era, almost a required final step rather than an optional flourish tacked onto the end. There's a real psychological logic behind it. Verbally agreeing to peace and physically demonstrating trust by eating from the same food are genuinely different experiences, and the second appears to cement the first. In a way, words alone often don't manage on their own. However, sincerely, those words were actually meant at the moment they were spoken. Neither man fully trusted the other, even as they ate. The text makes that much clear, but the meal still marked something real, a formal, physical acknowledgement that the conflict was over, whatever lingering suspicion remained underneath it. From a meal that formally closed one long conflict, let's move to one built around something far harder to formalize. Forgiveness in real time, unfolding in the moment rather than settled in advance. Number 3. Joseph's dinner with his brothers. Have you ever had to sit through a meal while trying not to fall apart emotionally in front of everyone at the table, holding it together through sheer force of will while everyone else has no idea what's actually happening inside you? Joseph does exactly that, hosting a dinner for the very brothers who sold him into slavery years earlier, none of whom yet realize the powerful Egyptian official standing before them is actually their own brother. In Genesis chapter 43, Joseph, now second only to Pharaoh in all of Egypt, invites his brothers to dine with him, seating them in birth order in a way that visibly unsettles them, since there's no obvious way a stranger could have known their exact ages or the order in which they were born, and sending portions from his own table, with Benjamin, his only full brother, receiving 5 times as much as anyone else at the meal. The text notes that Joseph has to leave the room at one point specifically to weep in private before composing himself and returning to the meal, unable to fully contain what he's feeling while still maintaining the disguise he'd carefully kept up throughout their entire visit so far. Eating during periods of intense, unresolved emotion is genuinely more physiologically taxing than eating in a calm state, since strong emotional arousal activates the same sympathetic nervous system response as acute stress, temporarily diverting resources away from digestion, regardless of how good the food actually is or how carefully it was prepared for the occasion. Joseph's meal works anyway, not because the tension wasn't real, but because what was happening emotionally beneath the surface mattered more than how smoothly the meal itself proceeded on the outside to everyone watching and unaware of the disguise sitting across from them. The full reveal doesn't even happen at this particular dinner, it comes later. But this meal is where something in Joseph visibly starts to soften toward the brothers who once sold him away. From a meal barely holding together under the weight of unspoken emotion, let's move to one built entirely around open, shared celebration instead, with nothing hidden beneath the surface at all. Number 2. The wedding at Cana. Not every meal on this list carries tension underneath it. This one is simply a celebration, and it's worth remembering for the joy of it, rather than only for the miracle that happens partway through and tends to eclipse everything else about the story. In John chapter 2, Jesus attends a wedding celebration in Cana, likely lasting several days, as was customary for weddings at the time. An entire community invested in celebrating together rather than a small, private gathering, and when the wine runs out partway through the festivities, a genuinely embarrassing problem for a host in that culture, one that could shame a family for years afterward and become the subject of gossip for a very long time. He turns water into wine, allowing the celebration to continue rather than end early, in humiliation, in front of the entire community. It's frequently remembered specifically for the miracle, the sheer scale of it, roughly 6 large stone jars worth of wine, while the actual context, an entire community gathered together in shared joy over several days, gets far less attention than it probably deserves. Positive, communal celebration meals like this one are associated in modern research with measurable increases in oxytocin, a hormone tied to social bonding and trust, alongside genuine reductions in stress markers among people sharing the experience together over an extended period rather than a single rushed dinner squeezed into a busy evening. Weddings across cultures still center food this heavily for a reason that goes well beyond simple tradition or convenience, tapping into something that appears to be genuinely, measurably good for the people gathered around the table together. If most of this list has focused on food repairing something broken, this entry is the reminder that shared meals don't need repair work to matter. Sometimes they're simply where joy gets to be fully, communally experienced, without any deeper agenda attached. It's also worth noting that Jesus' first recorded miracle in John's Gospel isn't dramatic healing or a public confrontation. It's quietly making sure a celebration didn't end in embarrassment, a strikingly ordinary, human concern to address with a genuinely extraordinary act. We've made it to the final entry, and it's the only one on this entire list that never actually happened. Number 1. The Rich Man's Feast. Here's the entry we promised you at the very start. And unlike every other meal on this list, it's not a historical event. It's a parable, a story Jesus tells, specifically to make a point, rather than something that literally happened to a real named family, and that distinction genuinely matters for how we should read it, rather than treating it exactly like the 9 historical accounts that came before it in this countdown. In Luke chapter 16, Jesus describes a rich man who feasts sumptuously every single day, dressed in the finest clothing available, while a poor man named Lazarus lies at his very gate, covered in sores that dogs come to lick, longing for just the scraps that fall from that same table, and never receiving even that much. The rich man never shares, never invites Lazarus in, never even seems to notice him as anything more than scenery outside his own door, day after day, for what the story implies is a very long stretch of time, both men growing old within sight of each other, yet worlds apart. Both men eventually die, and the story's focus shifts entirely to the dramatic reversal that follows in the afterlife, though the meal itself is really the moral centerpiece of the entire parable. Abundance, eaten in complete isolation from anyone in genuine need nearby, close enough to see and smell, but never actually invited to the table. Modern research on eating alone, particularly among older adults living independently, has repeatedly linked chronic social isolation around meals to worse health outcomes overall, poorer nutrition, even when food is genuinely available and affordable, and in some studies, meaningfully higher mortality risk compared to people who regularly share meals with others on a consistent, ongoing basis. A pattern public health researchers have flagged as a genuine, underappreciated risk factor in aging populations. Specifically, the rich man in this story isn't eating alone in the literal sense. His table is presumably full of guests and servants milling about, but he is eating in complete social isolation from the one person right outside who actually needed to be at that table with him. It's the one meal on this entire list, built entirely around abundance and entirely absent of the connection. Every other entry has been quietly pointing toward the whole time, a deliberate contrast Jesus seems to have constructed on purpose for exactly this reason. 9 real historical dinners scattered across Scripture, each one, in its own way, about who was actually present at the table and what that presence actually meant. And then this one, a warning dressed as a story, about a table with plenty of food and no one at it who actually mattered to the man sitting there, surrounded by abundance yet fundamentally alone. 10 dinners, and the actual thread running through nearly all of them was never really the food itself. It was who sat at the table, what was actually happening between them beneath the surface, and whether the meal built connection or simply happened to occur near other people without any real presence attached to it, which turns out to be exactly what modern commensality research keeps circling back to as well. Decades of studies eventually confirming what these 10 stories were quietly demonstrating the entire time, long before anyone thought to run a formal experiment on it. If there's one practical takeaway worth carrying forward from all 10 of these, it might be this. The next meal you sit down to, whether it's simple or elaborate, tense or celebratory, rushed or unhurried, is doing more than just providing calories. Who you're actually present with, and how fully you're present with them, rather than distracted or elsewhere in your head, appears to matter almost as much as anything on the plate in front of you. Which of these 10 surprised you the most? Let me know in the comments. I read every single one, and I'm always curious which story lands differently for different people. Thank you so much for watching, and I'll see you in the next one very soon.